So I'm going to start by talking about finance. And I want to just say a little disclaimer this morning. If you are here for the first time, or if you've come back to church for the first time after the pandemic, and you're thinking, oh no, they're talking about money, I just want to assure you we very, very, very rarely talk about the church's finances. I feel like we hardly ever do it, but it just happens that you've come on the Sunday that we are going to do it. So apologies for that, but I hope it's fascinating for you. So we'll start by talking about that. I heard a couple of little stories about money this week, which just made me chuckle. Someone posted on their Instagram thing or whatever it was. They said, I found a woman crying outside a supermarket the other day because she'd lost £200. So I gave her £40 from the £200 that I'd just found on the floor. It's important when God blesses you that we bless others. And another little story somebody said was that there was a man at the front of the church, and he, a very big, strong man, and he had an orange, and he squeezed the orange with all of his strength and got every last little drop of juice from the orange. And then he said, I challenge anybody to come and squeeze this orange and get any more juice from the orange. And this little old man sort of hobbled up to the front looking very frail, and he got hold of the orange and he squeezed the orange, and just drop of orange juice came from the orange. And the strong man said, how on earth did you manage to do that? And he said, I've been a church treasurer for years. Anyway, there we go. Kate, if nobody else will enjoy it. Okay, let me talk a little bit about where we're at financially. We promised at the start of the pandemic to keep people updated. We knew that the pandemic was going to be a challenge, and so we just felt like we tried to be open and upfront about church finances, but we felt like as the pandemic started that we just wanted to keep people more aware of what was going on. So 2019, if I can just tell you a little bit of a story going back a number of years. 2019 was a really good year financially for us as a church. Our income as a church comes from two sources. It comes from the money that we as a church family give to the church to support the life and the ministry of the church. And the other place it comes from is from hall rental, the renting out of our rooms and our building. And in 2019, both of those sources of income were up. They were on the rise. It was a really good year financially in terms of our income. We spent more money as well that year, but our income covered it. And it was a really encouraging year. But then 2020 hit, and the pandemic. And we were aware from the outset that it was going to be a challenge for us. Because the money that comes into church through giving, it doesn't cover all of our expenses. So we rely on our hall rental in order to top up that amount. And of course, with the lockdowns and all those things that happened at the start of the pandemic, our hall rental almost completely dried up. And so we knew at the start of 2020 that this was going to be a tough year ahead of us. Having said that, the government introduced the furlough scheme, and we were able to furlough a couple of staff members. And I just want to say that I was so thankful to Emma, who's our church administrator, and to Cassandra, who's the church cleaner, just for their grace in that moment of uncertainty for them. They were so gracious when we had to put them on furlough. But it did mean that we were able to reduce our costs significantly that year. And amazingly, in 2020, actually our giving increased. We had more money coming in through giving in 2020 than we had in the previous year, which was incredible. And we got to the end of 2020 thinking it was going to be a really tough year. And actually, at the end of the year, we had a small deficit in our general account. But overall, because of one-off gifts and that type of thing given to specific things, overall, we finished 2020 with a small surplus. And so it was just a remarkable year, and we were just so thankful to God for his provision through what proved, or what we thought was going to be a really tough time. But I guess as we approached 2021, it seemed as though we were thinking, okay, 2021, that year is going to be really tough. That's going to be a really hard year. And it was. It was. Last year was a really tough year for us financially. We hoped that hall rental would pick up. but the reality is it didn't. It did a little bit, but it didn't very much. And so our income was down on what we were hoping for all the way through that year. And actually our giving in 2021 also just reduced a little bit. So both of those sources of income were down again in 2021. But as you'll be aware, things like the furlough scheme ended, and it meant that our income was down and actually our costs went up. And so we finished last year with a deficit. And it was a deficit of £12,000. And we're not a wealthy church. We don't have loads and loads of money in our reserves. So we have what we need. We have what we need to comply with the sort of legislation that governs charities and that type of thing. But we don't have lots. And so a hit of £12,000 last year, that was a big hit for us. So that's the reality. That was the reality at the end of 2021. However, that's the bad news, but there's also some good news. And actually, I want this morning really to be a testimony. I want to update you on where we're at financially, but actually I want it to be a testimony of the goodness of God. Because in the middle of 2021, we received 2 legacies. 2 dear old ladies that were really key members of St Philip's Church for many, many years. Over the last year or so, they both died, and they both left money to the church. So Beryl Round, some of you will know, she hasn't been able to worship with us for a long time. And Betty Childs, who used to come every week to our 8 o'clock service. Both of them left money to St Philip's. And the amount of money that they left between them was £88,000. I mean, it was remarkable. And, in the moment, in the year of our greatest need financially, we had the most extraordinary gift that was beyond what we would have imagined possible. A gift of £88,000 that came in last year. And I was blown away when I heard about that in the middle of last year, and as we shared at PCC, and I remember Andy and I prayed one morning in my office just about the financial situation. We'd already had one legacy come in. Literally within about a week of praying that prayer, it may even have been the next time, we had the other one come in, and we're just like, oh wow, Lord, thank you so much for your faithfulness and your generosity towards us. It was just incredible. And so we're in this really odd situation financially, where we did have a really tough year last year. We did have this deficit in our general accounts in terms of what came in, what went out. And yet at the same time, in the midst of that year, we had this incredible gift from God through his people to the church. And it means that actually at the end of 2021, we're in this really odd situation where we had this really tough year, and yet we've actually got more money in our account at the end of the year than I think maybe we've had for as long as certainly as long as I'm aware that we've ever had. Amazing. So we're just so thankful. And I guess sometimes people stand up and they give testimonies about financial provision. And I wonder if you ever said, oh, I'd love to have a story like that. I want to say that you do. That's your story. Because that's the provision of God to us as a family. Amazing. So, if it was as simple as that, I probably wouldn't be bothering to speak to you very much about it. I'd tell you and say when you celebrate it. But I just want to chuck something else into the mix. Because this is important. It's important for us to just reflect on this a little bit together and to commit it to prayer. We're also aware, not necessarily all of us, but certainly on PCC, we're aware that our roof is at the end of its shelf life. We are warm and dry today, thank you, Lord. And we could be warm and dry for another 5 years. I don't know, it could last. But of course, we could also begin to discover that there are the occasional drip, and maybe it feels a bit colder, and there's some stains on the ceiling. We're thinking, oh dear, we've got a problem. And of course, replacing the church roof That is a lot of money. I'm not going to say how much it is. We have got some figures in our minds from some conversations that we've had, but I do want to give you some freedom to dream a little when we think about that. Okay, it really is a lot of money, and it's probably something that at some point we're going to, probably fairly soon, we're going to need to look at doing. Of course, the legacy money would go a significant way towards at least giving us the money to start that project. That gives you an idea. It would go some way towards helping us start it. But of course, at the same time, the reality is because of the deficit from last year, and I guess realistically, because there's still a lot of uncertainty this year in terms of hall rental and that type of thing, so we're potentially looking at a deficit again this year, we are going to need to use some of that legacy money to tide us over in this season of particular challenge, which of course reduces the amount in that we might have to put towards a major project that we would need to do. So that's where we're at. So it's a bit of a complicated picture. We had the deficit. We had the most incredible provision in the midst of that year, which just blows me away. And also a way of challenges for the future, for the near future, that will be, again, a financial challenge for us. So, I guess this morning, I just wanted to let you know that's where we're at. We said we'd keep people posted. That's our situation. Obviously, as a PCC, we're talking about it. We're very aware of it. We're praying about it. We're thinking about what might be the best thing to do. But I guess this morning, I just want to just put a couple of things out there to us as a family. It might be that as I've shared, and as you reflect on what I've shared, it might be that you feel the Lord leading you to make a gift towards the church, to help, in essence, cover the shortfall of last year, either to reduce it or potentially even between us to eliminate it. And of course, if you felt that, then we would welcome that, because if we can eliminate or reduce that deficit from last year, it puts us on a much firmer footing for what lies ahead and moving forwards. And so if you felt the Lord leading you to do that, as I say, we would really welcome that. And I'm just going to be practical. There's a number of ways you can do it. You can simply make a transfer into the church bank account. If you don't have the details, I can give you the details, or Kate can give you the details. You can write a check, you can give a cash gift. There's a number of ways in which that can be done. In terms of our accounting, the sooner that was done, the better, because we're trying to close the books on last year. So, but if you felt the Lord leading you in that way, then we would really welcome that, and that would really help us as a church family in this season. But the other thing I guess I want to say is there's just a challenge really, is if you're a regular member of St Philip's Church, if you worship here regularly, if this is your family, and yet you're not on the giving scheme, you're not on the regular giving scheme, I'd really encourage you to think about it. It makes such a big difference to us. And if you want some information as to how to become part of that, speak to myself, speak to Kate or Martin or Andy, one of the wardens, and we can let you know how to do that. And there's a number of different ways of doing it. We don't know how much you give, only Kate knows that, so it's all completely, it's just more the practical way of knowing how to do it. So those two things I just want to leave you with. It might be that you feel led to make a gift, in which case we really welcome that. It might be that you feel led to join the giving scheme, and obviously that would be a great thing as well to do. So just a couple of practical things leading out of it. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. But I want to say to you, the thing that I really want you to take home from this morning is that in the midst of the most challenging year that we've had financially as a church, we received the most extraordinary gift and provision from God. And that is a testimony to his goodness, to his faithfulness, to his generosity. And of course also it's a testimony to Beryl and to Betty, who are just faithful saints and thought of us in their wills. And so we want to honour them, and most of all we want to honour God, who is good and who is faithful and who meets our needs. So if you reflect on anything this week, reflect on that. Reflect on that. Let that feed your heart this week, because that's the good news and that's who God is. So that is where we're at. I won't say any more. I'm trying to think whether I've got another joke. I don't think I have. One might come to mind. That's where we're at in terms of money. I'm going to pause. I'm going to talk about vision in a moment. You might want to chat to someone next. I'm just going to take a pause because we're going to change gear a little bit. You might want to chat to the person next to you. You could chat about what I've shared. You could chat about Match of the Day last night. I don't know if it was on last night, actually. I missed it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It wasn't on. David confirmed. I thought that. I thought my life was missing something this morning. We'll talk about something else then. But just have a moment with the person next to you. You might want to pray with them. Just take a moment. And you might want to stand up, turn around. Anyway, take a moment, and then we'll come back together. Okay, guys, come back together in a mo. One of my fellow PCC members just mentioned that there's a third option as well, which is those who are already giving could potentially just increase what they give. But that's fine. But that's the thing. Julie and I, each year, we always just sit down together occasionally, just look at what comes in and think about what we give. So that's true. We could always reflect on what we're giving already. So bless you. Good. Okay. Let me talk I want to talk a bit about vision this morning, and what I sense the Lord saying to me, and I guess what I sense the Lord saying to us as a church. And I guess my prayer is that as I share it, it might in some way resonate with you and your heart, and just a sense in which maybe the Lord's saying this to us. I did say a little bit of this last week, but I'll say a bit more today. A few months ago, so before Christmas, I was in a meeting, and it was a meeting of church leaders from across the country, and people were just sharing what they felt the Lord was saying and doing and that type of thing. And one of the guys who was in this meeting, he said, one of the prophets in my church. And I thought it's always a great way to start any sentence, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? One of the prophets in my church. And he said, oh gosh, this sounds exciting. He said, one of the prophets in my church said this to me the other day. He said, this is a time for encounter, not activity. This is a time for encounter, not activity. And when he said that, I just felt like that quickening in my spirit. I don't know if you know what I mean, but just that when you have that sense in which the Lord is speaking to you. And I guess as he said it, it felt like it was something that I had been feeling but not been able to articulate, certainly not as succinctly as that. It was just something that I had sensed in myself, but I hadn't ever really given voice to it. And here this guy says, I feel this is a time for encounter, not activity. And as he said, I thought, yeah, that is it. That's what I feel the Lord is saying. And it isn't that our activity is bad. Let me just be very quick to say that. I love the activity of St. Philip's Church. I mean, even just this last week, on Friday morning, we started a really great Alpha course, and it was great to be there. On Friday night, we had an amazing quiz night, just a really fun evening here as a church family. It was just really great. Thank you to Elsa and to Anthony for putting all that together. On Thursday, we had a really lovely time together at St. Philip's Court, just a little service. I mean, the flats over there, and it was just a great time. I love the larder that we run each week. I love the children's work and the youth work and the schools work and all of those things that we do. I think they're all amazing. But I just sense in this moment that actually the thing that the Lord is wanting us to prioritize is meeting with Him. Just encountering Him afresh. Finding that place of intimacy with Him. It isn't that I think we should stop what we're doing, but I just feel like He's saying just prioritize that. Just prioritize that. in this season. And I have a feeling that as we do that, I just feel like there's a number of things that the Lord is wanting to do in us and through us. The first thing I just sense that the Lord just laying on my heart, something that he wants to do, is I just have a sense that as we give ourselves to the pursuit of him, to encountering him and finding that place of intimacy with him, I just have the sense that things are going to start happening in spite of us, not because of us. I don't know if that makes sense. John Wimber, who's one of my heroes, I've never heard him speak, but I've heard so much about him. One of the stories that people tell about him was that he had a moment where he had this encounter with God, and God said to him, "John, I've seen your ministry, now let me show you mine." And I just sort of have a sense that maybe that's what the Lord wants to say to me, but to all of us. It's almost like, I've seen what you can do, now let me show you what I can do. And the things that are particularly on my heart are just the things that I feel are on God's heart all of the time. I just have a sense that as we give ourselves to the pursuit of him, we'll see a greater sense of his power at work amongst us. That we'll see the miraculous, that we'll see people coming to faith, that we'll see prodigals coming back into relationship with him. All those things that are just on the heart of God that we see in the life of Jesus. So that I think as we give ourselves to the pursuit of him, we're going to find that things happen in spite of us, not because of us. The second thing I sense is that the Lord is going to burden us for intercession. The intercession isn't going to be a chore. It's going to be like we just have a burden for it. A burden to pray for our community, for our nation, for our town, for the nations. And I have a sense that actually I think that's going to be something that the Lord does across our town actually. The third thing I sense the Lord wanting to do in us, that he will do as we give ourselves to the pursuit of him, is that he'll give us a deeper love for our community. Not a love that in some way is based upon getting something back, but that sort of agape love, that self-sacrificing love that we see exhibited in the Godhead, Father, Son and Holy Spirit. That we will deeply love our community. And the fourth thing I sense the Lord will do is that he will give strategies for activity. And they won't just be ideas that come from the boardroom, if you like, but they'll just be ideas that come from time in his presence. So we'll begin to see new things birthed, new things happening, but there'll be things that were birthed in the place of worship and prayer. And so that's what I sense. That's what I sense the Lord inviting us to as his people in this moment, just simply to give ourselves to the pursuit of intimacy and encounter with him. I think biblically there's lots of places we could go to, but I just asked Dennis to read this one simple passage from Mark's Gospel. Let me just read the first few verses again. It says, "Jesus went up on a mountainside and called to him those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach." It seems to me that almost every time in the Gospels when Jesus calls somebody, he firstly calls them to be with him. And then he sends them to do something for him. But it always starts with that invitation to just simply be with Jesus. And I guess I feel like the Lord just wants to put his finger on that again. So would you just give yourselves to being with me in this season?